Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Sustain Leadership webinar series. Before I start, I'm really curious to know how many of you are actually watching this webinar from home and how many of you are watching it from office, because many of us have resumed going back. Many companies, as the restrictions of the lockdown are easing off across the world, we see many organizations are opening door. And many offices have seen their employees going back to their regular work environment. And that's why we chose this topic today. That's going to be about the going back to office. But we're going to look at that. Is it really a reintegration? Or does that mean that we are reinventing a new work culture? So this is what was happening. So let us go back a little bit and put things into perspective and put things into their context. And this is what we're going to be discussing briefly in the next half an hour. We're going to reflect on the past and on the current scenarios, what's happening around us. We're going to touch on some turning points from the crisis and the learning. We've been in more than 90 days, and more than 2 billion people have somehow seen their ways, their lifestyle, the way they work, the way they conducted day-to-day completely disrupted and completely out of what they are used to. And we're going to see and explore, because we still don't know what's going to happen. But really, as things are progressing and moving to a new direction after that standstill, we're going to see how the way forward could unfold. So a refresher of how we all were working what we call the normal way. So we were going to office every day, commuting, getting into our open offices, our own cubicle, interacting with our colleagues in meeting rooms next to the water cooler, interacting with them for lunches and coffees and engagement events and so just the usual that all of us knew. And then suddenly, from March, for some people before March, but I think for the majority, it was the month of March that was really a kickoff of this standstill and the kickoff of new ways of working, which has become what we call the new normal. That's a very common phrase that is used. And that made everything virtual. Meetings are virtual. Decisions are made without having to be in the same meeting room, without even having to be face-to-face. Webinars like the one we are conducting right now, even socializing. And I'm sure many of you have seen all the celebrations of birthdays or celebrations of other social activities, interactions, gaming. I've seen even people watching movies while not being together, each of them watching from their own screen. So in a nutshell, everything has become virtual, and that has become the new normal. Now, it took us some stretch, because going back from doing things in a certain way, and we know that we as humans, we are habitual creatures, to having to disrupt everything, to having to be home, to having to conduct meetings from anywhere, from having to be home all the time, to do homeschooling with the kids. So everything has completely changed, and that required the development of new habits. And as the saying goes, it takes 28 days for human beings to develop a new habit. And I think we had 3 times as much. We had 3 times 28 days. So definitely we had a chance to develop those new habits, to getting used to working from home, to getting used to working out of that regular work office, out of that regular work environment and that face-to-face. And that has actually created new habits. Now, a lot of people are finding comfort in this new way of doing things. Many people are finding it safer, finding it more comfortable, finding it more flexible to work from remotely, or to really conduct and lead their lifestyle in a way that is completely different from what it used to be 3 months ago, and a way that has been imposed by this pandemic crisis. So before we tap into the way forward, let's look at the turning point and how this pandemic has impacted teams and has impacted organizations. And I brought to you some facts and figures that I found online in a few researches that were done and a few surveys that were conducted. And I'll be sharing with you just that. So when individuals were asked about the benefit of remote working, the flexible schedule came at the top benefit, followed by working from any location and also no commute. Not having to commute is really a benefit that most of us could agree on, that we could get from remote working. Now, the number that's really interesting to look at is that now 98% of people surveyed say that they would like to work remotely at least some of the time for the rest of their careers. And that's what I was insinuating too, and I think I feel the same way. Many of you listening to us would feel the same way, that now we have gotten used to this comfort and this flexibility. So the majority wouldn't want to completely go back to 100% full-time in office, and we can only understand that flexibility that presents is something that any of us could benefit from. Now, I know other people as well that really did not appreciate being at home all the time. A lot of us missed, the environment of work. But what we're saying here is that many of us, if not all of us, would love to have that chance to work remotely. Maybe not full time, maybe not 5 days a week, but at least a couple of days a week to have that flexibility, to avoid that commute, etc. Looking more at numbers, 70% of interviewed people have expressed that working from home or having the choice of work location, that flexibility of work location, would be a key factor for evaluating opportunities. Okay? And 64% of people said that they would be open to be onboarded to a new company without having to see anyone, without having to have a face-to-face interview or meeting. They said they were very open when they were asked the question, how open are you to being remotely onboarded to a new company if provided the right resources and support? 73% strongly agreed that they would be comfortable accepting a job without meeting any of the team in person, only via remote video calls. And you can see all these other figures. But the learning from this is that remote work is here to stay, that remote work is attractive, that flexibility of the location will become attractive for a lot of talent. And what does that mean to us as HR professionals or as business leaders is that we need to keep that in mind, that to attract the right talent, we have to make sure that we are ready to include remote working as part of our policies. Otherwise, we could be missing out on some good talent who at 70% have expressed that it would become a key factor for evaluating work opportunities and career opportunities, which means that there are these changing behaviors of talent that we need to be aware of, and that those are constituting the future of work. Now, looking at struggles, so we looked at the benefits of remote work, but everything comes with two sides, right? So 54% of individuals who were surveyed say that their job have become increasingly more difficult. And I could really understand that, especially looking at parents, mothers or fathers, who have to be home without privacy, had to also attend to the kids' schooling. Now, probably would have been easier if mothers were working from home while the kids are in school, so they would have more time for themselves. You have people who don't live alone, maybe younger people who are working with roommates. So the lack of privacy, the lack of space, many people prefer to work with no distraction, prefer to have a quiet space. So it only makes sense if 54% say that their job have become increasingly more difficult, also with the lack of tapping into the resources or walking into a colleague's cubicle or office to ask to ask a question or to ask for help, maybe the connection, the lack of resources, and the change of environment. Definitely, no matter what flexibility that gave all of us, it looks like more than half of the people who were surveyed expressed that it has become more difficult. Now, that's from the employees' point of view. From the employer's point of view, the top worries or that they had from having to have their teams work remotely, at 80%, they were worried about or concerned about reduced employee productivity and also reduced employee focus, followed by reduced team cohesiveness and maintaining company culture. And if you look at these numbers, they totally make sense. Everybody's used to seeing their staff together, seeing how they collaborate together, being part of the same environment, maintaining that collaboration, meeting day to day, seeing each other day to day. So definitely, the remote work could have a negative impact on all of these expressed items on this slide. So if we want to summarize this turning point of remote working, we know that virtual teams are here to stay. And what it means actually is that teams now can work from any location, anytime. No set schedule, no set venue where they have to be. The benefit of that, to summarize them, is that flexibility. Definitely everybody would agree about the life balance, being able to work close to family, being able to spend more time with family, and also saving on that commute time definitely makes the day shorter. And so there are definitely a lot of benefits that we have all seen, but also we had to deal with their own we had to deal with our own set of challenges, and which could be summarized into the reduced bonding, the decreased focus and productivity, and also the risk of having the team members overworked, and also that fear and anxiety of losing of job loss. Because if you are home, you're not really in the environment, you're not listening to the decisions, you don't know if they are keeping you home because they want to get rid of you, because probably it would become redundant. So all of these fears and all of this anxiety comes into play when you are not in office, when you're not seeing everyone, when you don't really have control of what's going on. And the main thing that everyone is agreeing that could be lost or felt that it was lost is that sense of community, and that those impromptu casual conversations that we usually have. You'll be walking and you meet across somebody in the hallway and you ask them a question, or you give them feedback, or you ask them for feedback. That has been lost with having to work home, because even if we're having these Zoom meetings, they're not, because of the time limitation, you cannot really replace those impromptu meetings or those impromptu encounters, those coffee breaks, those water cooler encounters, and all of that. So what's next? Now that we had that 3 months break and we developed new habits, we developed new behaviors, we developed a new comfort zone to working from home, working while dressed in sweatpants, not having to wear high heels for us women, for example, not having to commute. None of these things I've been talking about. Now that companies are planning to go back to normal, businesses are open everywhere, face-to-face meetings are allowed to a certain extent. So are we really going back to normal? Like we were working the way we were working for decades, and then took a break that was imposed by this pandemic, and now we're going back. What do you think? Well, I feel that all of us know that we're not really going back to how it was. And the proof is all the list that all of you have received from your HR or that, sent as HR professionals to your teams about the new regulations, the new policies, the new ways of doing things. And even the reintegration, not everybody's going at 100%. Many companies have adopted a gradual integration of their teams. So moving forward, this is what we're looking at. We're even looking at redesigning workplaces. to make sure that there is a lack, to arrange a minimum or little face-to-face interactions. Probably we're going to have, again, private cubicles. We're going to move from having talked about the importance of open spaces, the importance of no door or open door policies, to having to minimize that face-to-face. Now, sanitization pumps have become, something very normal. I don't think that any of us, even the obsessive people that are known to sanitize and wash their hands more than the normal, I don't think any of us has washed their hands more often than we have done in the past 3 months. So that has become a new habit of maintaining hygiene and focusing on staying safe and germ-free. I think that has become definitely everybody's culture at home or at work or anywhere, as a matter of fact. Virtual meetings. Now, virtual meetings is not something new. Been having those for, I would say, a couple of decades maybe, especially with big companies, multinationals that have started expanding globally. We know that the remote teams is not something completely new, but it just has become mainstream with this pandemic. So positive impacts of the crisis. What are the learning from the crisis and these new habits that we were forced to embrace, and how positively have they impacted us on day to day? Safer, definitely, in cleaner work environment. We are looking at a transformation of culture. So hierarchies are altered in a way, because when you are working remotely as a leader, you cannot really rely on control. You cannot fully on control, because you can't really control how people are working and how they're spending their time. You cannot have that the same way that you have, where you could just walk into their offices or ask them for a meeting immediately or see how they are dealing with their work. So there is less focus on the vertical hierarchy. So hierarchies are flattened because of that lack of face-to-face. There's a need of more trust and more accountability, rather than just that hierarchical control. And second thing, because in times of crisis, we tend to need ideas, and we tend to engage everybody, because we need immediate solutions and we need immediate ways of solving problems, and we need immediate creativity. We need to promote that creativity to get ideas from everyone, rather than just from managers or depending on the authority. So that what we are seeing now is that hierarchy is being somehow challenged. And of course, digitalization, which was coming anyway, it has become the norm of working with digital tools. But now even small companies, even the ones who were postponing that digital transformation, have found themselves ready to embrace more tools, which means that there will be more digital certifications needed, more IT security needed, solutions needed, because you're having your employees access the company server from different locations that you cannot have control of. Again, because there is such a big focus on the wellness and on the health, maintaining everybody's health. So packages, insurance packages would see improvement. We are looking also at more possibilities for part-time or freelance, or what is called as gig work, which is beneficial to employees. A lot of individuals I know personally have really gotten that taste of working from home, and they tasted that easiness of being with their family more, and now probably many would start really experimenting or trying to just stay away from full-time jobs and work as consultants, which will enable them to be from anywhere. I mean, I know people who were stuck on their leave. They were stuck home. They were on their annual leave, and because they couldn't travel, they had to go back to working, but they reported to work virtually, and suddenly they feel like, okay, if I could perform my work while I didn't have to go back to office, how about if I continue doing that and I don't have to live away, I don't have to be abroad, I can just go and meet with the team annually or quarterly, and that will allow me to stay with my family longer. So you will see this change of conception of work and how many people would rather stay in their home country and still perform the work remotely. And also that means cost cutting for employers, because if they can access talent in countries where the cost of living is less, that means they will have a larger pool of talent first, and that will reduce the cost of having to bring them here and spend it on their visas and giving them higher salary, because the people will be living in a city where the cost of living is much higher than if they hired them when they were home. So there are all these kinds of benefits that everyone is going to start tapping into, employee and employer equally. More emphasis on training and engagement now that this we will have to work remotely. We'll have to have lack or little of face-to-face meeting. There's the well-being that we need. There's the coaching of managers, how to manage virtual teams, a lot of training on the IT platforms. So there will be that increased benefit on learning and development from employees and from employers. So how do we cope as HR professional or as business leaders? How do we cope with this reinvention? Because I really see it as that rather than just reintegration after the break. First, we need to accept that struggles are part of this journey. Individuals are not to be expected to report back just like if they were on a leave. Okay, so there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety. I had, as I said earlier, I had family members and friends who were talking about having their own coffee machine in the office and worried about, all these distancing, how to maintain distancing and how to make sure that they don't use anything that they don't take from home. So there is that fear from so many people about contamination. So going back to office won't be just a piece of cake that, okay, we're back and let's just pick up from where we left off. Definitely not. So it's a complete new culture, complete new habits, and we need to keep that into mind and allow individuals to adjust, give them time to adjust, because it's not a quick return. We also have to role model vulnerability and be there for people. Be there for them. Show them that we are also concerned, that we are also concerned about that uncertainty, that we don't have answers to every question, that we are experimenting, that nothing is set on stone. That will help the team members to really regain that reassurance and that trust and slowly go back to being committed to their work. Otherwise, the productivity will definitely be impacted. We need to also keep in mind that some individuals would rather stay home a little bit than work, go back to office. Others, the opposite. So this is the time for HR and business leaders to offer personalized solution, to not treat everybody as one, to really listen to others, listen to their special circumstances. If you have a single mother who's been staying with her kids for 3 months and now they're still not back to school, then probably that person needs to be allowed to work from home more, or work from home 3 days and then go to office 2 days, versus other people that circumstances actually, because of their circumstances, they would rather prefer working from home. So it's really about, rather than saying, okay, let's go back, we are all back to office, this is the time to show care, because that's what this pandemic has taught us, to really show care, to really be more empathic, to really be more human-centric. And this is the chance to do so by having a very, very delicate strategy of reintegration. So how do we build engagement? As I said, for me, the main concern is how do we maintain engagement while we have to maintain distance? And those words don't go together. For the past 2 decades, and that's what I do as work, we keep talking about company culture. We keep talking about the importance of engagement. We keep talking about the importance of having everybody bonding, of having a family culture in the office, of going out together, spending as much time, doing all these, team building activities where people are as close as it gets. And now suddenly we want to ask them to minimize. We want to even send them memos that they have to stay distant. So how do we maintain engagement while enforcing these new distancing rules? Well, first of all, the focus now needs to be on keeping the spirits up. It's very important to focus on the well-being, whether through coaching, whether through internal communication, really aggressive internal communication, to make sure that we are committed to the well-being of the people going back. We need to communicate clearly and show empathy, show that we understand that where they come from. We understand if they still have anxiety. We understand if they have fear of being outside of their office and then having that risk of being contaminated and going back and being afraid to bring that contamination to their home. So all of that, we have to show empathy, and we have to always respond and recognize on time. Recognize if we feel that someone is really struggling, and respond immediately. Give them solutions, give them alternatives. It's really about being attentive and listening actively. It's really about these 3 R's. I keep bringing the R's throughout my webinars. It's renew, because we are renewing that corporate culture. It's about rewiring, making sure that all of us are reconnected, and mainly reassuring everyone with that clarity. We know that we are uncertain, and we can afford to be uncertain about the future, but we cannot afford to be unclear about communicating our vision, where are we going, or at least what we are doing to find out where we are all going. Encourage innovation means encourage people to work in different ways, because we are still experimenting, we are still in times of crisis, and show that commitment, show strong level of commitment to them, because that's what leads to that strong sense of belonging. That's what will bring people back to stay together, to stay glued and bonded together. So it's really about resetting. So are you ready to press that reset button on the work environment? Because I believe that's exactly what we are doing. We're not going back. We are doing a full reset. And we want to make sure that that reset button will enable us to create a new culture that is conducive to resilience, that is conducive to reinventing our business model, to reinventing our teams, to continue and sustain our leadership and sustain our business continuity. Thank you, and I'm happy to receive any questions.